Hello and welcome to Sunset Television. I am Vishal Dahiya and you're watching our election special show on the assembly elections which are around the corner in 4 states and 1 union territory. Now, we've been taking you through various aspects of these assembly elections, be it the state of political parties in these states and union territories, their fate as well, their strategy, and also looking at various segments of the society and their importance and their significance in these elections. Now, in our previous show, we spoke about the women voters and their participation in the electoral process. This time around, we're going to talk about the youth. Now, the greatest strength and asset of any nation is its youth. India is truly blessed to have a youth power filled with tremendous ambitions and skills. Now, young dreams, young visions are enough to lead any country on the path of prosperity, and the participation of youth in the democracy of this country is continuously increasing. Now, the youth of India is now not only articulating their opinions on political issues, but also has a direct stake in the politics. With the assembly elections around the corner, now, ruling as well as opposition alliances are trying their best to woo these young voters with various promises of employment, education, development. Now, young candidates in the fray have also attracted young voters to take interest in electioneering. Majority of young voters who have access to internet source their political news from social media and digital websites. Thereby, the social media warriors of political parties are trying their best efforts to reach out to these young voters on digital platforms apart from large election rallies, roadshows, etc. The manifestos of different parties also aim at helping youth voices resonate with political parties and their leaders. Now, the young voters are pretty aware and very clear about what they lack and therefore what they want. From climate change to metro and such other infrastructure, they have their own bucket list of expectations. Let's start the show with the first-time voters in the poll-bound states. Let's try and understand the numbers here. In West Bengal, with the inclusion of approximately 20.5 lakh new electorates comprising 2.68 lakh first-time voters aged between 18 and 19, young voters registered for the 3-phase assembly polls in Assam constitute a major bloc. There are estimated 6.46 lakh youth in the age group of 18 to 19 years and are eligible to vote this time around. Of them, about 4.15 lakh have already registered and are ready to exercise their franchise for the first time. In Tamil Nadu, more than 21 lakh first-time voters have entered the poll rolls this year. In the 2016 assembly election, just 5 lakh popular votes were responsible for the DMK's defeat. Now, seen in this context, the 21 lakh plus first-time voters are indeed a crucial number this time around. In Kerala, as many as 2.67 crore voters, including nearly 3 lakh first-time voters, will be exercising their franchise during this assembly election. The young voters must be facilitated and encouraged to form informed opinion and not swayed by the hype of electioneering or emotive issues. Every young voter must vote, as it is crucial for creating the enabling ecosystem for their better future. Now, the young voters must also keep in mind that the voting right comes with responsibilities and each vote counts in a vibrant democracy. So let's start the show with these figures and this baseline that every vote counts. And for the young voters, it is their first opportunity to vote. Thereby, it becomes really important for them as well as for the political parties and their candidates as well. Let's try and understand all these issues state by state and obviously try and understand the larger picture also. And for more on this, we're joined by 2 distinguished experts. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with Jayanta Bhattacharya. Is a senior journalist who's seen how political parties act on the ground, work to try and woo various segments of the society. We also have with us Professor Sunil Chowdhary, a political analyst. Welcome, both of you gentlemen, to our show. And let's begin the show. Let me begin with you, Jayanta. Let's first start and understand, the importance of young voters in any election and specifically in these elections, these assembly polls.
Before I begin answering your question, Vishal, let me first, I really appreciate and acknowledge the subject that you have taken up. It's of, I shouldn't say concern, but it's of interest, and this is being looked upon by all the political parties, especially in the last about a decade or so. Whatever we have seen, it has been a referendum, a reaction, a reflection of the young voters in the past few years, especially in the last elections in 2019. But here I want to emphasize on the other side. The other side being the representation of youth in politics, not only as voters. Now, here I found a very interesting statistics. This was around the time of 2019 elections, as I mentioned. During that time, the target were the new voters, the young voters. And this was done by an organization called the Statista Research Department. And it was published sometimes late last year. Now, they did this study, this research in both metro and non-metro Indian cities in 2019. Again, I repeat, during the Lok Sabha election, around the time of the Lok Sabha election.
Okay.
And they found that about 39% of this youth, they wanted students and other youth, they should participate more into politics. But you know what? The other side of it, around the same percentage of those who gave their opinion, they said they should not participate. So if we go by these statistics, which I found to be the latest, there is a kind of a yes or no, which is very close together.
That's quite an interesting mix, in fact.
Indeed. Now, if we go and check about the representation within the House, now this is a very authentic source, which is the Inter-Parliamentary Union. Let us start with 2018. In 2018, it is not only about India. They did this all over the world. It's a global survey that they did. According to that, young people under 30, which we actually are the youth, addressed as youth, they are just over 2% of the world's member of parliament. And just 30% of the world's single and lower houses of parliament have no MPs aged under 30. That's 30% of the world's single and lower houses. That is, whether it's a unicameral or bicameral house, they have no representation of any MPs below 30 below 30 years of age.
Okay.
Now, let's come to 2019 in India. In India, we see Rajya Sabha, especially in Rajya Sabha, there is very few, just about 3%, around 3% of representation. And in the Lok Sabha, wherein the youth has increased, the population of youth has increased almost, I think it's one-fifth of the country's total population, where, let's say, youth up to 35 years, they are about 65%, more than half the population. Yet, only 6% of our leaders and ministers in India are below the age of 55 years and can be called young leaders, youth. In the Lok Sabha now, there are 12% youth leaders. Now, you will be surprised that in 2014, it was 8%. So there is an increase. So we see that more youth are coming here. Now, what we need to do to imbibe this interest so that there is that 50-50 difference is not there. Ki, yes, we should go into politics. No, we should not go into politics. Now, if you see, a parent would want the children to be a doctor, an engineer, a chartered accountant, whatever, scientist, whatever. Why not a politician? Politician, if you look at it, is not a profession. It's more of a service to the people, to the nation. So it needs a certain, you have to give something. There is more to give than you have get in return. So there you have to think that way and do it. And most of this we find that it's a kind of in the family, whether it's a son, whether it's a nephew, it's a niece, it's a daughter. So most of them, they're not coming from the outside, but it is coming from the inside. So I think that we have to start there. The political parties would not look at them only as voters, but as participants in the entire political process and the organization.
Okay, that's fair enough. Quite a interesting analysis there done by Jayanta Da, and those numbers are really interesting. But the points made by you, Jayanta Da, I'd like to bring you in here, Professor Chowdhary, on these two aspects. One, youth as the constituent of the voters, and also the representation of these youngsters in the electoral politics as representatives, as Jayanta was pointing out. How do you look at the situation right now? And also the question is, has it improved over the past few years?
Yeah, I do agree with what Jayanta has actually stated. Let me just place it in a different way. If you see that there is a mismatch between the number of youth in parties and party organizations and the number of youth in terms of the increasing participation in electoral politics in post-independence India, with a substantial increase in the post-21st, at the beginning of 21st century. So if you compare both the 2014 Lok Sabha elections and 2019 Lok Sabha elections, one could see a significant and substantial improvement in terms of not only the first-time voters from 18 to 19 years, but I would still say from 18 to 25 years. And again, if you see that, if you want to look at the youth from 18 to 35 years, that number has increased phenomenally in terms of the participation of the youth. And that has brought about a significant change in terms of electoral outcome. Second, I would say that in the post-21st century electoral politics, I would say that one could witness a shift from politics of alignment to politics of realignment. When I say politics of realignment, it means the young voters are not aligned to any specific ideology. Let's take the example of West Bengal, where 50% of the population constitute the youth because they are those who are born in 1986 or after 1986. So which means that this significant number of youth population, when you see their participation, so they are not aligned to either of the political parties. So it means that they might vote for a party in one election and might switch to different party in subsequent elections. And as Professor Yogesh used to say about tandem voting, voters voting differently both in assembly elections and Lok Sabha election. So what becomes more important in the current discourse is a shift from, say, ideology to leadership or leadership to issues. So the current and contemporary voters, the youth and young voters, are more issue-driven voters. So their focus is more on contemporary issues of development or governance, and you can just say number of indicators, whether it's education or employment or sustainable development or hygiene and climate change and others. So based on these kinds of changes and transformations, it is difficult to say that these young voters are going to sway by A, B or C political parties the way they are presenting themselves. The young voters, I would say that they have really become very smart voters, they are intelligent voters, and they know the very credence and salience of their vote in the electoral process.
Okay. And do you believe, Professor Chowdhary, that when you're talking about young voters, and it's pretty much right there that, they're pretty smart segment of the voters. They do take their decisions based on the issues which are dear to them. But in terms of the way political parties over a period of time have been trying to, woo this particular segment of voters, have they been hitting the right notes there?
No, yes, if you have rightly stated in the beginning that parties, in terms of designing their manifestos or in choosing the candidates or campaign managers, these young voters do play a very decisive role. So parties have started moving beyond their veteran leaders in terms of the electoral tickets. So distribution of tickets could be seen in different states, as we have seen in 2019 elections as well. Young voters are also being kept as part of the contestants by many political parties. And when these parties have got young leaders in many state parties, so we could see that these young voters are also coming as young contestants in different elections by the state political parties.
Okay. Jayanta, are the issues which are very dear and very important to these young voters, Are they being, picked up by political parties? Do you see that trend? Political parties and their candidates, be it a young candidate or an old candidate, are they able to understand the pulse of what exactly it is which the young voter want?
Yes, indeed. There is a very pertinent point that Professor Chaudhary also pointed out. It's about this new voters, if you can say, the youths and their ideas that are coming in. But you know what? I'll digress a bit. I'm really surprised that why every time we are talking about this participation of youths in politics, whether at the hustings or in the organizations. Now, if you see all these political parties, they have a youth organization. The Congress, whether it's the left, whether it's the BJP organization. In fact, they have a students organization also. Now, when the students, they start their career, but they are studying in the college, in the universities, and they're taking part in active politics as well. They're forming the students' union, whether one is directly associated with a party or not, but they're in that process, in that political process. What happens? Where are they going? How many of them are actually coming into politics and taking up the mantle? But, it has become perhaps, again, I'm saying perhaps, I want to underline that, but there is a feeling that there is a dynastical approach to it. If you have a father, an uncle, someone in the family who holds a good position, then you do not really want to allow another youth who may have the charisma, who may have, take the example of Mamata Banerjee, we were talking about West Bengal. In 98, she came out of the Congress and she formed the Trinamool Congress. And look what she did. She just turned the political history of the state of West Bengal. That was because she was so in her. If you look at from her point of view, she was fed up with the local Congress leaders in West Bengal who were not very sure who the enemy were and how they want to fight. She felt they were not aggressive enough. And she just changed. Whether she did it right, she did it wrong or whatever, but one person did it. But here what's happening, that if you have someone from your family, you will not look at that other, say for example, another youth, say from Madhya Pradesh, say from Rajasthan, you will not look at them because you have someone here with you whom you have to push. Maybe that is coming in the way of more youth who are, not coming directly into the political arena, even after participating in student or youth movement for a political party.
Okay, that's a very important point. And Professor Chowdhary, I'd like to you to answer that in terms of how do you view it and what is the way out of doing away with this process of dynastic politics. Because when we're talking about youth, Jayanta is right there. That for the youngsters to get a chance, it becomes difficult in the organization. And the one example cited by him of the West Bengal Chief Minister, there are several others as well. And the main important point in that example, Jayanta, is that she could do that only after bidding goodbye to the party with which she was associated.
Very right, Vishal. You see that there are three types of basically entry to the active politics. The one is that, yes, dynasty does play a very important role, and you could see number of parties, national parties or state parties promoting people of their own clans and castes and their own dynastic to be part of the electoral process and political parties. Secondly, the second way, because winnability becomes very important part of electoral politics, and parties very carefully encourage only those candidates who have got very strong chances of winning the elections. In the second stage are those, would say that those celebrities, whether they come from cinema or from some different other area. So celebrities are actually getting equal and easy access to the electoral politics. The third type, if you would say that, which doesn't have much impact, but yes, over the years, these third types of participation in party organizations and active politics is coming from the students' union, as Jayanta has rightly stated. Whether it is left parties or right parties, centrist parties, every party has got its very strong students' organizations all across India. But only those students, leaders get tickets in the elections, whether they are from the assembly elections, the Lochab elections, who have got good credentials in terms of winning the elections. Apart from these three, I think we fail to find out from parties in encouraging through internal democracy young leaders, young students, young people who could actually enrich the parties both in terms of vision and mission. So I fail to find out that parties have come out with their own specific missions to engage such young people in the electoral process where they could be given ticket. Some parties like the BJP and others have started making inroads, including the Congress, capping these young people as part of the political process. But again, I would say that it is difficult to make a venture into strong custodian of electoral politics where the winnability becomes very important and the old veterans are not willing to vacate their positions or their seats to these young people, the newcomers. So I think parties should encourage the newcomers, those who come not from the celebrities, not come from the students, and shouldn't come from the dynastic politics. They should allow people from the common areas, common classes, common groups who could come out with their own vision and mission and who could opt for politics as a profession and a vocation. So parties have to move beyond all these three categories and encourage young people so that they can play a very important role in transforming politics in 21st century.
Okay, fair enough. Let's take a quick concluding comment from Jayanta here as well. Jayanta, from your point of view, what needs to be done by the political parties and by those youngsters who want to make a mark in the electoral politics as well, given the fact that there are these really important factors pointed out by Professor Chowdhary there. One, of course, is winnability, and second is veterans not willing to let go of their hold on their respective pocket borrows.
Yes, indeed. I totally agree what Professor Chowdhary has said just now. Winnability is a big factor, but you will get the winnability when you get the right exposure. They have to be exposed. They are coming through the organization, whether it's the student or the youth, they are getting exposure and they need a proper platform, a bigger platform for more exposure. Now, let me give you two quick examples. I'll wrap up. One is that soon after Narendra Modi won in 2014, he had immediately announced that anyone beyond the age of 75 will have to retire. There was a mixed emotion over there. We saw immediately two women politicians, Anandiben Patel and Najma Heptullah, immediately resigned. The others were a bit reluctant. Why should I? Why shouldn't you? If you don't, if you go and you advise how to do better in politics, look at the other way around. This age-old party, I call it age-old party with the pun intended, is the left. Let's take the CPIM. Once upon a time, it was full of octogenarians, nanogenarians in the Central Committee. But today what have them, after getting beaten time after time, in West Bengal, if you see, most of them are new faces. Even a sitting president of a students' union is contesting the election. So they are doing an experiment. It's too late in the day for the left. Anyway, let's forget that. But why shouldn't there be a kind of not a retirement age, but advisor kind of thing when certain stage comes? Use the kind of knowledge you have, the what you have learned in your career, and you impart it in the youngsters. Give them enough exposure. They will find their own platform. That's my feeling.
Okay, definitely veterans need to go ahead and train the youngsters, and youngsters need to have that opportunity, get that opportunity in terms of electoral politics. Thank you so much out there, Jayanta Bhattacharya, as well as Professor Sunil Chowdhary, for sharing your views on this very, very important segment of our society and its role in the electoral politics, not only as candidates, but also as voters. They do drive a lot of issues, and as our panelists were pointing out, while a lot has been done, their participation has increased, the youngsters' participation has increased to a certain extent. We still have a long way to go, several hurdles to cross, and it will likely be done in time as well. We'll come back again with a different topic tomorrow. Till then, keep watching Sunset Television. Thank you.